What's up guys, Captain here. Today I'll be talking about a character from one of the best role-playing video games of the decade who has inspired some pretty strong feelings from players all around the world. He is a fan-favorite companion and also the fan-favorite first to be killed by Principle alone. Yes, we are talking about Astarion.
Bodies everywhere, yet not a drop to drink.
He is an origin playable character from Baldur's Gate 3. He has such a complex character that can be seen evolving when you interact with him. I mean, on the surface, he's very charming, he's roguish, he's got that kind of bad boy thing going on, but there's a lot more to him than that. And I think that's what really intrigues people and the players. He's got this very dark past. He's a vampire, centuries-old vampire. He's done some pretty terrible things in his past, and I think that's what really makes him so interesting. You have this character who is so charming and likable on the surface, but then he has this whole other side to him that is very, very dark. So the first question that arises on mind is this the reason why players have such strong reactions to him? Because, I've seen people who absolutely love him, and then other people who are just like, you get him away from me. And that's what I think is so fascinating about him, is that you have those two extremes. And there's not a lot of characters, I think, in video games that elicit that kind of reaction. So why do you think that is? Like, what is it about him specifically that incites these reactions among players? We know he's a vampire, so you already have this kind of inherent conflict built in. Vampires are traditionally seen as creatures of darkness, monsters, evil. But he's not like that. He's not some mindless blood-sucking fiend. He's got this personality, he's got this wit. He's got this charm, he's funny. And I think that makes him a lot more relatable than your typical vampire. And then on top of that, he's also a companion, which means that you are spending a lot of time with him. And you are getting to know him. You are making choices that affect him. And I think that level of interaction really deepens that connection that players feel with him, whether it's positive or negative. And that kind of lead me into, I think, one of the big questions that the players decide for him right at the beginning, which is, why do some players choose to kill him off right at the beginning of the game? Like, why would you want to get rid of a companion, particularly one that is so powerful? He's got skills, he's a rogue, he can do all that stuff like lockpicking. He's really useful in combat. Why would you want to get rid of him? But I think there's a couple of reasons for that. And I think one of them is that some players just find him too morally reprehensible. Like, they look at his past, they look at the things he has done, and they just can't reconcile that with their own sense of morality. And so for them, it's a matter of principle. It's like, I can't have this character in my party. He's done too many bad things. It's like, I can't condone this. Even if it means sacrificing a powerful ally. They just can't live with themselves if they keep him around. Then again, I think for some players, it's almost like a role-playing decision. They are so invested in their character that they're like, my character would never tolerate this. My character's good. My character's lawful good. And there's no way that Astarion's gonna stick around. That's one of the things I love about this game. It really lets you make those kinds of choices. You can role-play your character. You can make decisions that are consistent with their personality and their beliefs. And it really has an impact on the game. And I think that's one of the reasons why people keep coming back to it, because it's just so replayable. So that's one reason why people might get rid of him. And I think the other reason is a little bit more strategic. So some players, they pick up on these little hints early in the game about potential consequences tied to Astarion's fate. And they're thinking ahead. They're thinking about, what's going to happen down the line if I keep this guy around. So, for example, your approval rating. See, your approval rating with certain party members can plummet if you side with Astarion in key decisions. The key decisions being, how do you react to certain situations? It's like there are actual gameplay ramifications to whether or not he's there. And I think that for some players who are really into that kind of strategic min-maxing kind of gameplay, they're thinking about, what's the optimal way to play this game? And sometimes that means getting rid of Astarion, even though he's a powerful companion. And I think that speaks to the complexity of the game's design, that they have actually thought about all these different possibilities and how your choices can have these ripple effects throughout the game. And I think that's one of the things that makes this game so special, is that it really feels like your choices matter. It's not just an illusion of choice, right? It's like your decisions actually have an impact on the world around you, and that's something that you don't always see in video games nowadays. And it's one of the things that I really think sets this game apart. So, we have talked about why people might kill Astarion, but let's talk about the other side of the coin. Let's talk about the people who want to help him ascend to ultimate power. Help out Astarion become Vampire Ascendant. Because that's a thing, you know. There are people who are like, I want to help Astarion become the most powerful vampire ever. So why?
I see it.
And I think there's a couple of reasons for that too. I think one of them is that they genuinely like him as a character. Like, they've gotten to know him, they have come to understand him, and they sympathize with him. And they want to see him succeed. They want to see him achieve his goals, even if those goals are, maybe a little bit questionable. And it's not just a matter of liking his personality either. It's about actually going through the effort of making the choices that lead him down the path. And it's not an easy path. There are specific choices that you have to make throughout the game. You have to really commit to his character arc. You have to do things that maybe you would normally do if you were just playing the game for yourself. And I think a lot of that has to do with his backstory. If you really delve into his backstory and you understand where he's coming from and the trauma that he has experienced, centuries as a slave, being forced to do his master's bidding, having his own desires and ambitions suppressed, and it really makes you want to help him break free. And I think that Ascendance for him represents that freedom. It represents the chance to finally be in control of his destiny. And for once in his existence as a vampire spawn, a slave, Astarion gets to make his own choices, to not to be beholden to anyone. And I think that's a very appealing idea to a lot of players. Like a twisted form of redemption, I think. I mean, it's not a traditional redemption arc by any means, but in a way, for him to kind of reclaim his agency and to become the master of his own fate. Am I making any sense? Okay, and I think that that's something that a lot of people can get behind. But I mean, there's also a dark side to that too. Like, we're talking about a character who's already very powerful, and we're talking about giving him more power, right? And so what does that mean for the world? The world of Baldur's Gate, the fate of Faerun? What does that mean for the people around him? Like, is this really a good idea? And that's what makes this choice so compelling, is that you don't know what's gonna happen. You don't know what the consequences are gonna be like. It's a gamble. It is a gamble. And it's a gamble with potentially very high stakes. So, you are not just shaping Astarion's fate, you're potentially shaping the fate of the entire game endings. That's a really lot of responsibility for the player. And I think that's one of the things that makes the game so thought-provoking. And it really makes you think about the choices that you're making and the consequences of those choices. I mean, are we okay with a little bit of evil if it means achieving a greater good? Or are we so rigid in our morality that we are willing to sacrifice even our own happiness to uphold our principles? And I think that part of what makes this game so great is that it forces you to confront those kinds of questions. And it really makes you think about your own values and your own priority. Are you willing to compromise on? What are you not willing to compromise on? And what does that say about you as a person? I think a lot of games don't really do. They don't really make you think about those kinds of things. And I think that that's one of the things that sets this game apart. So I think we have tried to cover a lot of ground today by asking ourselves why people love Astarion, why people hate Astarion, why people might choose to kill him off, why people might choose to help him become all-powerful Vampire Ascendant. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is that there is no right answer. It's all about your own personal choices and your own interpretation of the character. It's all about what you want to see happen in Baldur's Gate 3. And I think that That's what makes him such a fascinating character to discuss. So, as you continue your journey through this masterpiece of a game, that's Baldur's Gate 3, keep thinking about Astarion and keep making those choices. See where it takes you and see where those choices say about you as a player, because I think you might be surprised by what you learn about yourself.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Whatever that means.